Good morning, Scott Stanfield. I am the modern longevitarian. Welcome to episode number 77 with our special guest today, Justin Roethlingshoefer. All right, so I'm super excited, but before we get there, let's talk about, you can go to my website and download my free book on sleep called Outstanding Landing, How to Get the Sleep of Your Dreams. And this book's going to help you one of two ways, right? It's going to help you have an outstanding landing, meaning develop an evening routine and land in a perfectly designed bedroom that has all the right environment for you to sleep, which it may be the proper bedding, the proper color on the walls, also the proper temperature of 65 degrees, and the proper background noise that you need. Some people don't need white noise. Some people do. Some people use meditation to sleep. Some people need binaural beats. Some people need to clear their runway and jot down things that are keeping them awake, because our thoughts are what are racing when we actually should be winding down. So just the other way is, this book is either my writing is going to be so boring it's going to make you fall asleep anyway, or you're going to find this way to really develop this, these habits around falling asleep. And sleep is by far the most important pillar when it comes to your health. So that's why I wrote this book and put it out there. And I love doing the research. I love researching those things. And so you go to my website, strongforlonger.com, and you can download this book called Outstanding Landing, which was inspired by Chuck Yeager, passed away on December 7th. And he was the first pilot to break the sound barrier in a level flight. He was in a plane titled or called the Bell X-1, and he did that. So it's a super cool way of looking at the analogy of using this quote that he said, which is, if you can land a plane and walk away, it's a good landing. But if you can land the plane and use it again in the morning, it's an outstanding landing. So all of this, the theme of the book is written around that particular quote from Chuck Yeager. And so without any further ado, let's move on to our guest today. Former NHL player and coach, Justin, how are you doing today?
Phenomenal, Scott. So excited to be on and going live here. First time going live through a streaming platform. So excited to be doing this with you.
Awesome. Yeah, this is we're broadcasting on the Spirituality Gone Wild network. So thanks for watching there, and we have about 6 places on Facebook. Then we're on my YouTube channel, and then on LinkedIn as well. So yeah, this is podcasting without a net. We're just swinging, and sometimes I stutter, mispronounce things like names like Roethlingshoefer, right? Things like that. It's like but we just go, man. So I love doing the live episodes. It's really super fun. So
yeah, no, it's really awesome. So we're broadcast all over the interwebs right now.
Right. Yes. And for me, it's also like planting a seed, right? It's like I'm putting this out there. This lives on the platforms and it lives inside those feeds, right? So it's different than podcasting. And I do take some of the episodes and download the audio and then put it on the podcast platform. And I do intend on getting caught up with all of the episodes that we have and put them in the right place for that. But Justin, you and I did a call. Gosh, it's about a month ago. We talked on the phone, I guess.
Yeah, something like that. I think back in Thanksgiving time.
Yeah. Wow. So, but what I love about your story is that, you didn't do this stuff when you became a pro athlete. You did all of the things that you now do in this high performance living, and really kind of, focused on your health and all these little things that help you perform better as a junior hockey player. So maybe if you can give us a little background on how you got started on this and why you started doing all of these things to live this high performance life.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So I think I learned at a very young age, probably around like 13, 14, that there's nothing that makes us unique. Every single one of us is, I like to call them a dime a dozen. And what separates us is our ability to be consistent, our ability to show up and be the best of us every single day. And so I took that as a challenge for me on the ice. I wasn't the biggest guy. I wasn't the fastest. I wasn't the strongest. I wasn't the most talented. So versions of me, I was a dime a dozen. You could have chose anybody out there and said, oh, same type of talent, playing at that AAA level. We were all the same. But what made ultimately allowed me to be different and to play as long as I did, and to again ultimately pay for my schooling, get me a scholarship, have the opportunity to play on a pro contract, and then also uh, get my next career in the National Hockey League as a performance coach, was my ability to be consistent, to show up every single day and be the best. So at the best of what I was, the best of what I could bring, and no one ever questioned as to what they were going to get from us. And I always said, talent gets you noticed, but consistency gets you paid. And it's the same thing in life. Is you could be the best. Why are you the best accountant? Why are you the best doctor? Why are you the best lawyer? Why are you the best mom? Why are you the best dad? Well, it's your ability to show up consistently as the best version of you. And the question then becomes, what are you doing to optimize that idea of you, or optimize that person that needs to show up day in and day out to ultimately bring that level of consistency?
Wow. How quickly did you learn about recovery? Because I mean, it's not like you weren't pushing yourself on the ice, right? I mean, to show up consistently, that's the first thing that really comes to mind for me.
Yeah, so it was really weird, and I remember the day. I was 12 years old, and I actually I was 10 when I started to I made my first team Alberta. So I'm from Canada, so it'd be like making your state team, and
Mhm.
then was notified, or was identified by Hockey Canada as a potential for national level play. And I looked around, and everybody was great. Everybody was like really good, and I was just like, you know what? How we all work as hard as we can. We're all training off the ice. We're all doing extra work. But what can I do to become that 24-hour athlete? And I got sat down by a coach at the age of 12, and he said to us, he said to me, he goes, every single person that you come up against from here on out is going to have the same access to ice time, is going to have the same access to training, is going to have the same access to coaching. But what's going to separate you is your ability to be able to do it day in and day out. And that led me to, well, what does that mean? It meant how I slept, how I eat, how I supplemented, how I rested, how I recovered, the ways in which I looked into what I needed. So it was that day at 12 years old that I got a heart rate monitor. I got uh, some brainwave monitors. And from that day forward up until today, I still monitor the way I sleep, still monitor the phases of sleep in which I go through, the brainwave states in which I operate through. Had a DNA test go on, had an iridologist at 13 years old, learned what I was nutritionally deficient in, learned where I could again make the most gains for myself. And what ultimately helped me get into those higher level of recovered states, so that I could push myself to the level that I needed in order to improve, in order to perform, while also making sure that I was able to come back and do it day after day.
Mm. That reminds me of when I really started focus on sleep and recovery. I haven't said I've done this. I've only posted this a couple times. I've never mentioned it on a live show. Is that when I was managing restaurants and on my feet like 10 hours a day, right? I started actually sleeping with compression sleeves on my calves, right? Because I would wake up in the morning and I couldn't walk. My Achilles were so tight. And during this time, I developed, and some of you may have seen the show where I did my 7-minute man yoga, this hip stretching routine really kind of stretches all my hips in every direction. And that's where that was born from. But one of the game changers was putting compression sleeves on to sleep with, not actually during performance or while I was exercising, those things. And so I'm starting to think about how that allowed me to show up consistently. And I don't know if you've heard of anybody else doing that, but my point is how does that translate into, because I know you work with a lot of entrepreneurs and CEOs now. How does this recovery help those people show up day in and day out consistently?
That's a great question. And Just because we've dealt in the arena of sports and athletics doesn't mean that it doesn't apply immediately over into your corporate athlete, and not even your corporate athlete, just your corporate individual, your executive individual, because uh, the only thing that's really changed is the arena.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a doctor, if you're a lawyer, if you're a bartender, if you're um, a restaurant owner, if you're a accountant, you name it, your arena becomes the hospital. Your arena becomes the office. Your arena becomes the courtroom. Your arena becomes the restaurant. And that is what you're going in and having to perform in and day out. And there's very systematic, very baseline, very key pillars that you need to enhance day in and day out in order to ensure that you're showing up as that best version of you. Because I guarantee you, Scott going in at 50% to run his restaurant is not going to get the same productivity, is not going to get the same results, is not going to get the same outcomes. Your team is not going to look to you the same way at 50% as 100%. And if that is inconsistent of what you're able to show up at daily, well, all of a sudden, your employees, your team is going to say, well, Scott's not showing up at the way he's showing up. I don't know who's going to show up today. I don't know how well he's going to show up. How should I show up? And that culture that a lot of us talk about, culture, comes from not just preaching about it, not just talking about it, but actually living it. And the outcomes and the energy of which we're able to show up on, it becomes infectious.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody shows up and they're full of energy and they're ready to go and they are in a great mood and they're sharp and they're intellectually contributing, that's attractive. That's something you're drawn towards. And all of a sudden, people around you, your team, your corporate leaders, they're going to look at you and go, man, I want to be like Scott. That is what I want to be like. What is he doing? Instead of saying, oh, I wonder how Scott's going to show up today.
Right.
Scott, you ready? Not once in my career, not once did somebody say, hey, Justin, are you ready to go? That was something that nobody, it was, hey, I know Justin's showing up today. How's everybody else going to show up? And that was something that I took great pride in, because I knew that the way that I prepared, the way that I got ready to play, was something that then rubbed off on everybody else. They saw me wearing the compression socks on the planes. They saw me getting into cold tubs at night. They saw me spending an hour and a half at the rink after everything was done to be able to cool down and be ready to go. And now the same thing happens here at home, where I get into the compression boots every single night. I get in the Normatex. I have a sleep routine. I wear the blue light blockers every single night once the sun goes down. I make sure that the room is at 62 degrees when we're sleeping. I make sure that I'm utilizing my my morning shake, my morning smoothie. I'm getting up. I'm getting sunlight in the morning. I'm getting some type of movement. I'm grounding myself throughout the day. These are all things that are not just things that I have to do. They're things that are a part of me and that I do so that I can show up and have the energy and have the productivity and have the consistency day in and day out. So that just becomes a part of who I am.
Right. You know, it's funny. I was on the phone with a friend of mine a couple weeks ago, and he said, "You actually do this stuff, don't you?" I was like, "Yeah, I do." Right? You know, I really meditate. I did this morning. I did my Wim Hof breathing exercises. I already had, you know, a liter of water this morning. I, you know, purposely, even though I went to bed late I fell asleep yesterday. I took a nap, you know, and went to bed late. I still got 8 hours of sleep this morning, which made me a couple minutes late signing on to before the show here. You know, I really do stretching. I really do the Wim Hof method and get on, you know, and I really, you know, try to connect. Right. So there's all these things that are there. And I remember that, you know, and the actual recovery portion of it was super big to help me show up consistently. And one of the big things, one of my first podcast interviews, actually, I think it was my very first podcast interview, was with when I was on this side of the microphone, was with Chef Sean Boucher, who has the Business Chef podcast, which is put on pause right now because he had to open a restaurant and those things. But he has a book called Managing Food People. And one of his things is his formula to success is consistency. And that is actually not consistency in like your customer service standards or your kitchen, putting out breakfast burritos or those type of things, but the consistency of how emotionally and physically the manager or the owners or the chefs show up to work, right? To create this culture. And what you're talking about, what you did on the playing NHL and coaching NHL, and now with your coaching clients, you're teaching the same exact thing. And I absolutely love it because it's probably the most important thing that we could do to build success. And when I race go-karts, I don't know if we talked about this or not, but I raced go-karts and was sponsored and won a bunch of championships. And one of the things, I wasn't ever the most talented like you, wasn't the most talented driver. Like if you took me and other people like, that I raced against, like for instance, Charlie Sox, who was my boss and owned this company, put us on equally prepared go-karts and put us on the same track, he probably beat me like 9 out of 10 times. Right. But if you give me 3 rounds of practice, right, and allow me to like to dial the cart in and do that in my prime, right, it probably could flip it where it could go 50-50, right, where I could, beat him 50% of the time, right, where I could dial the cart in to where it would go faster. And so and that consistency in that, the mindset of knowing that I had to build the cart to go faster for me to and drive that in combination with all those things. But the difference with me is that I would, you could take me to a soft dirt track, a hard dirt track, an asphalt road course, and I could finish in the top 5 in all of those, right? Where other people couldn't do that, right? They're really good on different surfaces and those type of things. And we take them to another surface and they weren't as consistent on those different ones. And so that's one of the things that helped me. But
Or you
your
even look
story,
at that another way, Scott, and you could even say that because that other individual was so much more talented than you, all of a sudden what happened was because you closed the gap with everything else that you did from your consistency of habits, you were in every single race and gave yourself the opportunity to win. And that's a lot of times I think things that we don't think about is we're like, oh, I'm not as talented, or oh, how could I ever build that business to compete with that guy? How could I ever train to compete with this individual, or look as good as this one, or whatever your goal is? And we don't ever give ourselves the opportunity to even step into the ring. We never give ourselves the opportunity to even step behind the steering wheel of the car because we're like, say, oh, don't have the talent. There
right?
are people that are just naturally born with an interest or something in something. But when we want to compete, we can close the gap with our habits, with our consistency, with the way we show up, and give ourselves a chance to win every day. Because guess what, guys? It's not whether you win or lose, it's the gift and the ability to compete and show up and be in that race every single day. And that race is figurative. That race can be building a business. That race can be building a family. That race can be showing up at home. The balance between work and home life. It can be an actual competition, and just the ability to play, just the ability to show up, as Kobe Bryant said, just the ability to be there. The process, the journey, is the gift itself. And the moment we realize that, the outcomes don't matter.
Mm,
But it's the ability to show up and have the gift to be in the race, in the ring, is really what it's all about. And it all comes back to those consistencies of habits that allow us even to the privilege to step into that ring.
right. And it was funny. I was wanting to for about 5 minutes to bring up Kobe Bryant, and I couldn't figure out how to do it. And you mentioned Kobe because um, was doing a lot of studying on the Mamba mentality when the helicopter crash happened just over a year ago, and I'd been digging deep into that for a couple weeks, and I heard him tell this story about when he was 11 years old playing in this famed summer basketball league that his dad and uncle and Wilt Chamberlain had all played in. He scored 0 points that year and was playing against other 11 years old, and he just sucked, right? And then his dad says something to him. He said, no matter if you score 0 or 60, I don't care. I love you the same. And that gave him permission to fail. Right. But then he went out and, 4 years, 7 years later, he was actually drafted straight from the high school to NBA, right? And one trade put him with the Lakers, which he stayed with for 20 years, right? And became the Kobe that we know. And so, right, he may not, Kobe Bryant may not have had the talent, but he had the desire to get there and had to figure out a way to show up consistently. And that's where the Mamba mentality came from.
No, you're bang on with that. I mean, the way that Kobe approached the game and life in general, like a lot of people don't realize this if you just know Kobe as a basketball player, but that guy was about to absolutely drop the hammer on the business and entrepreneurial world. Like was doing something amazing in the media space, the growth space. Like he was in it deep and was about to change the game. And that's just what he does. And something that he said that goes back to the level of consistency, the level of showing up every single day, was he kind of gave this example where if you're talking about an individual that wants to be great at anything, wants to be good at something, has a true passion, knows what that is, it's about being able to put the time in. And when he started to look at this, it goes back to your story when he was cut from that team, just like Jordan. Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team. They just put time in. They consistently shot hoops. They consistently played. They consistently went to the court. They consistently showed up at the gym, consistently did these action steps. And when you're doing an hour more than anybody else a day, well, that's 7 hours a week. Well, that's 30 hours a month. Well, that's 360 hours more a year, or 365 hours more a year. All of a sudden, that time, that cumulative amount of time, it's insurmountable. You can't get greater than that. So all of a sudden, if you take a step backwards and you say, I'm now going to be this 24-hour athlete, and I put athletes in quotations. If you're going to be this 24-hour entrepreneur, if you're going to be this 24-hour mom, this 24-hour dad, this 24-hour lawyer, what does it take to do that? Well, you're going to have to sleep. You're going to have to eat. You're going to have to hydrate. You're going to have to manage your stress levels. You're going to have to maximize your immune function. You're going to have to optimize your mindset. You're going to have to optimize your environment in which you're surrounding yourself in. Now, if you're putting yourself in that 24-hour bubble and you do those things consistently, now think about being 24 hours better than everybody else, because you're habitually getting into these processes that are emitting greatness in every level. Why do you just want to do something? I want to do it great. And that's the difference. A lot of us just are like, well, I got 8 hours of sleep. Okay, great. I want to get 8 hours of great sleep. Or I just had a meal. Okay, awesome. I want to have a great meal. Okay, great. I just had a workout. No, I want to have a great workout. I just signed a deal. No, I want to sign a great deal. Everything you have to do, you want to do great. And when you build that level of consistency, when you build that level of repeatability, when you build that mindset of how you're showing up and do it consistently day in and day out, now start doing the math on that. If somebody else is showing up great 3 hours a day, you're showing up great 24 hours a day, you're doing it 21 hours more a day. You're doing it now. I'm not this good at math, but it extrapolates out extremely quickly, that the gap starts to grow. And that person that has the talent that you're like, I can't insurmount that, can very quickly get overcome by that consistent person who shows up daily in and every single day with those habits that they're trying to obtain.
Absolutely. I got a question about that, which I think is the next step of that is momentum, which is we were talking about. But before we do that, we've got several comments that have come in. I want to go back and just recognize these. We've got Deb that has put in, and you can see these, they should be popping up. Actions speak louder than words. We lead by example in every aspect of our lives: emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual. So Deb, thanks for watching the show. I agree with you 100%. The example we have about everybody around us, how we show up. And I'm sure and that's exactly what Justin was talking about earlier. People knew how he was going to show up day in and day out on his teams and his family. So there. And then our guest from just last week on Friday, Bernard Mueller, chef. Yes, sports and business go hand in hand, not only from the competitive point of view, but also from intellectual perspective. So, and I don't, this chef Bernard's from Germany, lived in Mexico for a while, now in the US. He's in Florida, actually, same state you're in, Justin. He actually started working for Marriott when they had less than 70 properties. So, I mean, a long, long, time ago, right? And so many people love working for him. And then Deb also had another comment. Our daily routine is so very important. I have 3 non-negotiables that I stick to. Wake up 1 hour earlier than I normally would. Pray, meditation, and journal of gratitude. And all of those are amazing. The science of gratitude, starting your day with gratitude, is just absolutely amazing. And more people should do that. And then John Jensen has been made a comment as well. Thanks, John, for watching the show. Did Justin mention iridiology? I don't know what that is, as part of his early learning about optimum health. It's a question for you.
Yes, I did. So at the age of 14, I went to an iridologist. And so what an iridologist does is basically opens up and takes pictures of your eyes. And by looking at the iris of your eye, the color, and seeing where there's different gaps in the color or the way in which it forms, it's attached to different portions of the body. So the gut, the heart, the liver, and you're able to start to identify nutrient deficiencies in which your body naturally lacks. So combined that with my DNA and epigenetic testing that I also did at that time, was easily able to tap into the way my body digested protein, the way it digested carbohydrates, the way it digested fats, the way nutrient deficiencies that I was lacking on the micronutrient profiles, taking a look at the way in which collagen breakdown, the way stress affected my body and hormonally, taking a look at my cortisol melatonin cycles in which I was going through. And so from those, I was able to establish habits and patterns that truly meant something to me, not just something that a guru would say, or not just something that was thrown out there of, oh, hey, you need 8 hours of sleep. Well, for me, I need 7 hours and 15 minutes. That's what my data tells me. That's what the quality of sleep that I require, based on my sleep cycles, the way I go through the 4 stages of sleep. That's what I need to be optimal. And so that was one of them. The other things that we started to know was that my body broke down collagen quicker than a normal person. So just knowing that, I was able to get into the collagen peptides, the different bonds that are coming through our body earlier. So all of a sudden, what happened was we're able to now understand what you need. And I was able to start, again, make myself more durable, resistant to injury, recover faster, just simply because I knew what my body was missing. But in a typical world, what we do is we're like, oh, here, you need branched chain amino acids, you need some arginine, you need your whey protein to finish your workouts, you need beta alanine to start, you can use creatine to help you get a little bit stronger. But naturally, my body's a non-responder to all 4 of those. So all of a sudden, instead of just putting more into my body that it's like, Justin, I don't know what to do with this, and just get rid of it or just do it for the sake of checking a box, I now had specificity of what it meant to me, specificity and a way to track that it actually does mean something and that I'm doing the right things, or the things that I'm doing still aren't quite right, but I can continue to tweak to make sure that it does apply to myself, and then start to see the results on the back end.
Wow. Do you do this kind of testing with your clients that you have now?
I do. Yeah. Every single one. That's again, what's unique is in what we do is every single person that comes into our community goes through a DNA test, epigenetic test, ELI assessment, as well as has some type of wearable tracker that we're optimizing, and then bringing it all together to create a holistic system for them, and are again able to get those baseline habits integrated in a system that matters to them, so that at the end of the day, we can take a look at the feedback that we're getting and continually tweak in the most minute areas to get the maximum amount of gains. So that, because a lot of people, they're busy. You can't change up everything all at once. You can't require the same amount of time that a professional athlete would have, because we're not trying to turn you into professional athletes. We're trying to turn you into, it sounds cliche, but we're trying to turn you into the best version of you. And typically this is what I give as an example, is when Michelangelo was carving David out of that marble slab, he would sit down by the river and look at that marble slab he looked at it for about 2.5 years before he started to work on it. And then he started to carve. And at the end, they said, Michelangelo, this is incredible. How did you carve David out of marble? And he goes, David was always inside that marble slab. I just had to carve away everything that wasn't David. And so for us, that's kind of what we're doing at the same pace, is we are understanding what you need, what you're deficient in, what your body requires, what that inner version of you is actually begging for. And then we cut away everything that isn't going to get you closer to be that person and optimize you. So again, to answer your question in a very long form, yes, we do all the DNA, epigenetic, and ELI testing on our clients in our community so that we can create their plan and play their game. Because again, nobody wins and nobody knows your game better than you.
Right. Well, I recently stopped taking, I'm looking up on the shelf where the supplements are sitting, right? As when I look up, because I recently just, probably since the first of the year, maybe December, stopped taking all supplements except I've been taking some vitamin C on and off the last 10 days or so, but B12, I take that still because I've been eating more plant-based. And so I'm not getting B12 because I'm not getting a lot of, meat and stuff like that. Because I'm like, and I was taking creatine. When I first started doing the ketogenic diet, I wasn't taking creatine. And then I started seeing where people who would, what would help with explosiveness or really help with your workouts and things like that. And so I'm smaller now than I have been in a long time. I mean, smaller, like my muscles aren't pumped up, and stuff like that. And I think it was actually hurting my liver because I was taking so much of it. But and so I didn't know what was working, what wasn't working, and it wasn't in the right proportions. Like you buy a supplement that's got 500 milligrams or 2,000 milligrams, and it's just like I'm just taking these things randomly, and I just stopped taking them. I'm just like, I don't want to like keep putting these things in my body if I don't know if they're working the right way. And then I even saw Dr. Stephanie Seneff say she doesn't take any supplements because she's worried about the glyphosate that may be in the gelatin capsules, right?
Sure.
Because there's no regulations against that. And I was like, well, okay, let's just stop doing that. But I want to get back to, there's another question that came in from John Jensen, but before we get there, and John, that was actually the same question I had, and we'll get to that in a second, but I want to talk about building momentum, right? You talk about consistency, but how important is it to build momentum? Like, for instance, like just sleep or diet, or you start putting all these pieces together. And when people start doing things consistently over time, I mean, how does this really start to snowball and grow and build momentum in their life?
Yeah, it's a great question, and there's not one blanket answer for everybody. And how when I'm typically asked this question, I usually go back to it, and it requires a lot of, at least a little bit of white space. And what I mean by white space is giving yourself the opportunity to pause, reflect, and take a look at these 8 pillars. Again, you can go off your 8 pillars of mindset, breathe, hydrate, sleep, fuel, movement, getting uncomfortable, and connecting. I've got different ones in which I work people through, which is nutrition, hydration, sleep, immune function, movement. God, why am I blanking here? Mindset, environment. And when you sit back and you take a look at this and you go, okay, which one am I lacking in the most? Do I feel like I'm going to bed at night, or am I staying up until 1 a.m. watching Netflix and then trying to get up at 6 and hitting the snooze button until 7:15? Am I putting green things on my plate, or am I getting everything from a box? Am I drinking water, or is the closest I drink to water the little bit of water droplets that I have on my piece of fruit that I'm eating throughout the day? Or am I moving, or is the most movement I get from the couch to the fridge throughout the day? So it's identifying the biggest pillar or the biggest hurdle that you need to overcome. And if you address that one first, just go for one. Because like we said in sport, how does a winning streak start? It starts with one win, and then the momentum builds from there. How does a winning streak start in our life? It starts with one thing. And a lot of times we get it confused. We think that momentum and motivation precedes action. We think that we should be motivated and ready to go to the gym, ready to make that meal, ready to go to bed late or go to bed early. And then from there, we'll start to see results, and it'll start as a cyclical effect. But it's actually inverse. Is we start and get clear. We take this moment where we're like, you know what? I am going to consistently go to bed at 10 p.m. every single night for the next 3 weeks. I'm going to set my routine at night so that I'm in bed, ready to sleep and preparing to sleep at 10 p.m. every single night. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, you've now taken an action. That action thus builds motivation, thus builds momentum, because you wake up with more energy, you wake up refreshed, you've succeeded at something, you've done something, and that gets you a certain result, and that perpetuates it. It's the same thing if your issue is nutrition. Well, you don't want to go and say, okay, I'm going to go and hit all my macros, I'm going to calorie condense, I'm going to do all these things. No, I'm going to start, and I have a 3-2-1 rule that I do with all my clients is when this is their pillar. It's, hey, we're going to have 3 meals a day, 3 square meals a day. What do I want those meals to consist of, Justin? I don't care. I just want you to have 3 square meals a day. Number 2 is I want you to have 2 pieces of fruit a day. What kind of fruit should they be? Apples, bananas, pears, nectarines, plums, grapes, cantaloupe? I don't care. I want you to have 2 pieces of fruit a day. Okay. Last one, I want you to have 1 salad a day. 1 salad of those 3 meals, one of those 3 meals has to be a salad. The entire meal has to be a salad. Okay, great. So now that's something very simple. It's an action step, 3, 2, 1, that now builds momentum and builds growth and builds motivation to do everything else. But it all starts with an action. So action comes before motivation, comes before results, which then helps that perpetual cycle. And so, but it starts with taking that moment to pause, that moment to reflect, that moment to have white space to say, what do I want to accomplish? What pillar do I need to focus on? And what does my action step need to be?
So similar. I do the same thing. And most of the time I have to start with sleep, and it's 21 days, right? You do 3 weeks, 21 days, the same thing. And I love your approach to simplicity when it comes to diet, because people can really overcomplicate that as well. And, I call it fuel because I look at it as fuel for our bodies, and we are what we eat, and we are when we eat, that matters too. And so I super love that as well, because we have very, very similar in a lot of ways. John's question is this. He goes, does Justin do microbiome testing?
We do. Yes, absolutely. It's a huge part of the whole onboarding process to figure out, again, what that microbiome looks like, because little do we know that our gut microbiome actually has a direct link to our brain. It's called our second brain. It's a nervous system all unto itself. And it actually contains 400, a lot of people don't know this, it actually contains 400 times more melatonin than that's produced by our pineal gland in our brain. So the ability to create the cycle of sleep, the ability to create the cycle of brainwave states, the ability to create mood changes and adaptations actually starts in our gut. And that gut health is key to everything. So we do microbiome testing to find out what we need from both a prebiotic and a probiotic, because we're just going for the probiotics, the yogurts, the kefirs, the things like that help with that gut biome. If we don't have enough prebiotics in there, nothing in the cilia to help turn it over and help actually get it out into our bloodstream and into our system, the probiotics are just going to go right through us like any other type of food. And so it's the combination and finding out the balance for you that truly matters. And that gut health is so, so important, especially nowadays, because like I said, it is the second brain. that helps operate within our body.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, it's driving the bus, really. I think that I heard
Yeah.
Dr. Gundry say that there are 6 times as many nerves going from the gut to the brain than there is from the brain to the gut. And so there's a lot of, a lot of communication going up, for that. And
And
I
on
don't know
top
if you,
of that,
yeah, go
and,
ahead.
no, apologize. On top of that, the the amount of neurons and neural responders going from the gut to the brain is 15 times greater than the amount of nerves going to your extremities. And we all know how sensitive our extremities are. When you're touching something, when you're trying to do fine motor skills, there are upwards of 50,000 neurons touching anything at a given time. They're very sensitive. The homunculus, as we know, which in how you touch, is in our fingertips and our toes and our tongue. Massive, massive amount of nerve endings. But we have 15 times more in our gut, so that when we have a stomach ache or something happens that makes us nervous, we feel it right in our gut. When we have that gut feel, always trust it, always come back to it, because there's a major connection between the gut and the brain. And that's why it needs to be just kept so healthy day in and day out by the habit. And it comes back to knowing what's actually going on in there. What does the baseline look for us, and where can we start to create some change through simple habits and behavior changes for you?
Wow. It's and people don't even realize about the balance of this ecosystem. We talk about the microbiome, but there's this microbiota, right? Where's the balance of the fungus and the virus, and the parasites and the good bacteria, those type of things. And I did in December, I did a candida cleanse, a 14-day candida cleanse, and I broke out. It was so effective that I was too effective. I broke out in a rash over my entire body because my liver couldn't keep up with getting the toxins out. So it started coming out of my skin. And for years, I can't even tell you that I have been like avidly, like ravenous about eating nuts, like peanuts, cashews, now pistachios, right? And literally about halfway through that cleanse, my desire to and my craving for nuts basically dissipated almost down to zero. Like it was like every 2 days, I was like, even during the pandemic, going to the store so I could buy a bag of pistachios or cashews or both, right? And I was eating all of those nuts in 2 days. And now I literally have zero craving because and what happens is that in some cases, a candida overgrowth can make people actually crave nuts. And so I didn't know that until that. I thought nut was a healthy thing, being keto and all those things. It was like, it's where I'm getting my fiber. I'm getting magnesium from this. It's just amazing. Yeah, I eat a little too much, but not really. But then come to find out, it actually could have been feeding a candida overgrowth, and my microbiota was out of balance, right? And so there's something that's perceived healthy, vegan, all those type of things actually could have been feeding that. And now I literally that went away after the cleanse, and which is an odd mental thing, right? To have been eating something every day for years and for it to now drive the bus the other way where I don't crave it anymore, which is really kind of a crazy thing. I don't know if you've seen anything like that before, Justin.
I have. It's really amazing to see what happens where foods have been. First off, there's no such thing as a superfood. Okay, it's just food.
Right.
And does it work for you or does it not? And so often, almonds have been talked as a superfood, and the acai berry has been called a superfood, and the goji berry has been called a superfood, and the chia has been called superfood. But at the end of the day, our gut is made up, it's so complex, and our gut is made up of bacteria, both good bacteria and bad bacteria, and they both
Mhm.
live in harmonious balance. But as soon as we start to take in foods and nutrients that flare up the bad bacteria, that's where we get diarrhea. That's where we get chronic dehydration, chronic stomach aches, stomach ulcers, uh, acid reflux.
Gas, bloating, things like that, right?
You name it, all of those things. That is where it's an immediate sign that something's going on within us that we need to change. And so often or not, we ignore these things, and it starts to create this this massive issue within us, because there's been things that have been clinically proven to damage or disorient our gut biome. And those are like artificial chemicals, the pesticides, the fungicides, the rodenticides, that whatever side you want to put in there, but it means to kill. Like, so we're eating those, we're ingesting them, like processed foods, haphazard or like repeated antibiotic use, chemical additives of food, preservatives, chlorinated water, like all these things that were just like, oh, I would have never thought. But they come and they lead to this gut dysbiosis that cause other issues long term, and it creates a microbiome that is no longer optimal for what's living there and for performance. And it causes issues of sleep, it causes issues in food digestion, it causes issues in food absorption. And at the end of the day, it leads to some severe problems that we may or may not have thought of before. So one of the big ones right away, that a lot of people that may or may not be listening, but a key takeaway is diet soda is actually worse for us than regular soda in terms of what it does to our microbiome, as well as metabolism, because it can actually break our metabolic rate.
Wow. And so many people, like even, people who do a dirty keto, right? Where they will like eat, all that stuff, right? They'll have diet sodas and that type of stuff. And, I say the first thing, but for me, fuel or food has 5 F's. And the first one is clean food. And that means non-GMO, right? That means, that means organic, if at all possible, and just understand that, yes, organic food may cost more. It doesn't cost as much as it used to, because the number one seller of organic food in the US right now is Costco. Number two is Walmart, right? And so it's not, you go to Whole Foods or Whole Paycheck, yeah, you're going to pay a premium if you go there, but you can find things, you know, it's like, for instance, right? Everybody may like, right. I went to Walmart the other day and I saw, White House has this old school vinegar company has this raw, organic, unpasteurized apple cider vinegar, right? You can go to Whole Foods and buy Bragg's and pay $7 for it. Or you can go to Walmart, get the same thing in a different label for $4.36.
Yep.
Right. Right. And it's like, so you can choose to, go to other places and get your organic food, and the stuff that's really clean. And so that's by far the most important thing when it comes to food. Even though I've been keto and been cycling keto for 5 years, this month actually, or actually last month, January. I don't say everybody has to go keto. I think everybody needs to build metabolic flexibility. So F is part that flexibility is one of the five F's in there. And so that's super important, because I don't think that everybody has to be keto. I think that we need to, as a functionality, just be able to burn both fat and carbohydrates in there. And if you're fasting quite long enough or exercising in a fasted state, you're going to clip over into keto, and catch that second wind. I think that second wind that we catch in the afternoon when we haven't eaten enough or we've been working in the yard, or something like that, and you just get this burst of energy, that is actually clicking over into ketosis. And so having your body do that easier, I think, is a way to live a little bit healthier and a longer life. Before we get into anything else, we had another comment come in. Bernard Kevy dropped in a comment, a great high performance interview. So Bernard, thanks for dropping that and watching the show today. Justin, we got about 10 minutes left, and I mean, I got so many questions. We're probably going to have you back on the show. And I know you and I are talking behind the scenes about maybe collaborating on something down the road. Let's talk about your books. You got 3 books, Amazon bestseller. Let's transition into that real quick, and then how people can find you online. So let's talk about your 3 books.
Yeah, so there's 3 different ones. Like I said, the first 2, or the first one anyways, is called Intent, really focused on building a high performance system, from a it's really all about self-experimentation, and what you would look for within a team setting. So if you're in a corporation, if you're in a athletic setting, if you're in a running a facility or wanting to set it up for your family, all really cool ways in which you can just track and know what to monitor, what to look at, to be able to make conscious changes of, depending on the budget. There's something that is as little as free, something as little as very expensive. So
Right.
have that across the gamut. The second one is really, it's called Blueprint, focused on what it takes to build that high performance body, and body and mind, really. And again, guiding through utilizing data, technology, information to better know you, so we can create your blueprint. So that's that one. And then the third one is called Own It. Really just focused on looking at you as an individual, you as a person, and kind of as a little bit more biography in nature to myself, and what I've gone through, and taking a look at our 8 pillars, and stories from my life, and what ultimately drove me to leave the National Hockey League and enter into this space of serving conscious leaders and empathetic leaders to better show up for themselves and the people that they're leading on a day-to-day basis, through enacting on their high performance habits, and turning them into, again, like I said, cliche, but the best versions of themselves.
Mm. That's amazing. We had another comment come in. Travis said, great combo here. Loving this, you guys. So, Travis, thanks for watching the show as well. I love that you mentioned empathetic leaders, right? I used to get asked in interviews towards the end of my career when I was interviewing for restaurant GM positions and director of food and beverage spots. And, what's your leadership style? And I say it starts with empathy. And they would, like, people's like heads would spin on their shoulders, right? It's especially like these old school, like, I'm going to break you down and build you back up the way I want you to be type, managers, not leaders. And, I love that is something that is a focus of yours, because that is something that I believe is emerging as the way to really, be a great coach, and a great leader inside an organization. And as restaurant managers go, it was very rare, right, for me to want to give people that space and me to be empathetic, right?
Especially
And
within this Gordon Ramsay place. So you're differentiating yourself by that for sure.
right. Well, this is my theory on Gordon Ramsay. I think that the guy we see on TV is actually kind of
He's an
it's, a,
actor,
it's an act, right?
persona.
I do think that this happens, right? And there's many chefs and managers that watch this show, and Bernard was one as well, right? That was on Friday. But my point is this: is that I think that behind the scenes with his actual employees, right, that Gordon Ramsay probably has this super soft side, that he's able to connect with people and really do that. That's my theory about how he's built longevity inside the restaurant business, because people,
Oh,
yeah, would people put up with that type of treatment to have Gordon Ramsay for 3 years on my resume? Yes, but it's not worth it, right?
I mean, you're going to learn pretty quick that there's people like you that exist. And I think if I can leave with like one comment, or one thought, and kind of where we're going with this is, we all show up as humans. We are all unique in our own way, but every single one of us is going to respond and react to those that surround us with support, community, empathy, building of each other up. And at the end of the day, living in a situation to just put up with it day to day is going to be such an energy drain on us, and is going to be a drain on the nutrients in which we have, the sleep in which we get, the importance of everything that we do day in and day out. We talk about these high performance habits. If we're not living in a high performance environment, that's why environment is one of our pillars. If you're
Mhm.
not living in a high performance environment, those around you, those who you're surrounded around, it has such a drag on you, and is going to affect every single thing that's going on within your body. I don't care how great your habits are. And so if you want to create longevity, you want to be the modern uh, longevitarian, you have to act out of empathy, out of support, out of leadership, out of consciousness, and really be there for not only yourself, but all of those around you.
Right. And that's why I, talk about there's a connection between leadership and longevity, right? Because if you're this empathetic leader, empathy is one of the pillars of emotional intelligence, right? And so if you have more empathy for people, you have higher emotional intelligence, you have less stress, you're mitigating this stress in a different way. And so you're developing this increased health span, increased lifespan. And so here's the thing though, for people who have, you know, never heard of or don't know how to find it, be an empathetic leader. You're not a pushover by any means. You're putting yourself in people's shoes, but you still have to, you got to hit deadlines. You've got to hit spec. You've got to lead people. There has to be discipline for people who are tardy to work or break rules, or you still have to fire people, right? There's all these things that have to go down to lead people and as I would actually describe this way. And I don't know if you ever heard this or not, but I look at it. Sometimes this is an ecosystem, right? And I'm the cultivator of this ecosystem by being the leader. And sometimes I have to prune away at the edges of it for people that are, dead limbs, if you will, because the energy goes to that one dead limb to try to like revive it, right? But
Yep.
if you prune it away, the rest of this bush or this ecosystem can flourish, right? And so don't think that you're just a pushover and that you love everybody and that nobody gets in trouble and all those type of things, because you have to and Simon Sinek says it this way. He goes, it's like being a parent, right? You praise them when they deserve it, and you discipline them when needed, right? And so there still has to be discipline inside of an organization. You disciplined personally, like going to bed on time and doing all the right things, eating the right food and doing those things. It's not like, you know like the old school hockey players that may have been up at 3 o'clock in the morning drinking beer and then showing up, for a game the next day and things like that. I mean, this is a whole nother level of stuff. And, but yeah, it's super important. And I believe there's a connection there. And I haven't really, you know, I talk about that when I have other leaders on. We talk about leadership, but I don't really talk about it on shows like this. But I love that you believe the same thing and teach the same thing that I do. That's amazing. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So we're getting close. We can wrap. So we can wrap it up here. So Justin, where can people find you online?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very active on all social media platforms, specifically Instagram and LinkedIn.
Mhm.
LinkedIn at Justin Roethlingshoefer, just my name, and then on Instagram at Justin Roth at Justin Roeth. And then again, a great way to reach out to both Elise and I is through justownit.co. You've had it listed there the whole time, so just through the website. There's more information there, and then. Definitely the ability to book a call or get access to our team and a bunch of free resources, articles, you name it, through the website and other platforms. Very active on all of them. I think producing up to 50 pieces of content a week. So no
Mm.
shortage of finding information.
Right. Well, we appreciate you putting all out in the world, and I'm looking forward to having you back on the show at some point in the future. 77 episodes. I've had over 50 guests because I do some solo episodes every week, and I have yet to have a repeat guest, but I keep threatening to have some repeat guests on, and I know you'll be in the top of that. One more comment come in. Denise Washlow says, jumping in at the tail end. I love what I'm hearing. I'll catch the replay. Hi, Scott. Hello, Justin. Have an awesome week. So, Denise, thanks for jumping in on the show. Yes, the replay, this link will convert into a replay as soon as it's over. So, Justin, if you had to give one piece of advice on what the most important pillar is or where people could start, where would you tell them to start?
Yeah, the big thing I would say, go back to what I talked about at the very beginning, was give yourself that time, give yourself that space, give yourself the white space, carve a little bit of reflection time out for you, because again, we go back to the gut. The gut will tell you, when you give yourself the opportunity, connect the mind and the stomach together, what you need to focus on. And when you figure out and you drop that ego, you drop that wall, and you're like, this is the area I need to focus on, step in, take action on one thing only. And when you own that, The moment that you own that, the moment that you take action on that, that is when momentum builds. That is when things can continually start to be added. And we highly underestimate what we can get. Sorry, I'll back up. We highly overestimate what we can get done in a month, but highly underestimate what we can get done in a year. And remember, consistency always wins.
Awesome. That's great parting words. Everybody, thank for watching this episode 77 of the Modern Longevitarian with my guest, Justin. I'm going to make sure I pronounce this Roethlingshoefer, right? So,
You got it.
right. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been amazing. I hope everybody gets as much out of this as I did. Again, my name is Scott Stanfield. I am the Modern Longevitarian. And if today is your Friday, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Cheers. It's time to roll the credits.
All right.